With an almost 90% record at the Rugby World Cup, the Southern Hemisphere has been a dominating force on the global stage. But is it finally time for the South to relinquish their control over the Rugby World Cup? Today, we look into the 3 most successful teams in rugby history and figure out if they can still muster up the power and skill to keep a stranglehold on the World Cup, or will all-out war reveal a kink in the armour of the Southern Hemisphere teams? 3 nations at war. Now, it'd be wrong for us to say that the 3 most dominant nations in world rugby have turned on each other. In fact, they never really liked each other in the first place. For these nations, respect is high, but the desire to win is even higher. To give us a better indication, we would have to break down each team and see what their prospects hold for the coming World Cup. Number 1. All Blacks. Currently tied with the Springboks at 3 Webb Ellis trophies, the All Blacks have always had a presence when the World Cup rolls around. Having won the first iteration, New Zealand became the trendsetter, with each team dreaming to follow in their footsteps. However, the All Blacks have lacked consistency since the 1987 tournament. It took the best team in the world 24 years before they managed to win their second trophy. Fortunately, they did manage to win it consecutively. If we compare the All Blacks to the Irish, who have never managed to get past the quarterfinals, we see that New Zealand has made it past the pool stages at every iteration of the tournament, with one slight blunder in 2007, which saw the All Blacks knocked out in the quarterfinal stages. They've consistently made the final 4 times, having lost only once to the Springboks in 1995. With such consistency, it's no wonder the All Blacks will always be one of the favourites to hoist their 4th Webb Ellis trophy. Perhaps the French might have something to say about this. For the 2023 World Cup, the All Blacks have to get past Les Bleus, a feat that often haunts New Zealand, and a team that has sent the All Blacks packing on no less than 2 occasions, including their early exit during the 2007 quarterfinals, coincidentally also hosted in France. Number 2. Springboks. Coming in as a close second to the All Blacks in World Cup success, the Springbok fans might argue that they've missed out on the first 2 iterations. However, this has not set them back in any way, managing to lift the Webb Ellis trophy 3 times in 1995, 2007, and most recently in 2019. Unfortunately, the Springboks are often a hit-and-miss team when it comes to World Cups. Having participated in 7 of these tournaments, they only managed to make it past the quarterfinals 4 times. 3 times, these victories eventually spurred them on to win the final, putting aside the loss to the Wallabies in the 1999 semi-finals. Fortunately for the Boks, the 2023 iteration is held in France, which turns out to be the same country where they won the 2007 final, dispatching an English side after a grueling encounter. But perhaps we should not forget that the Springboks only win the World Cup every 12 years. Having won the Cup in 2019, you might only find them hoisting their next trophy in 2031. Do you think the Boks can buck this trend? Let us know in the comments. Number 3. Wallabies. Sorry to our mates down under, but the Wallabies have declined significantly since their monstrous team at the 2003 Rugby World Cup. Had it not been for the Springboks winning in 2019, we might have added them higher up on the list. For the Wallabies, the World Cup has been a mixture of frustration, combined with a little bit of hope and plenty of disappointment. Having won the 1991 and 1999 iterations, the Wallabies were on par to become back-to-back champions in 2003. Unfortunately, a young Johnny Wilkinson had something to say about this. Since the defeat in the 2003 season, Australia only managed to reach the final once in 2015. However, this doesn't seem too bad for the Wallabies, as aside from 2 rare early exits in the quarterfinals during the 2007 and 2019, the Wallabies have consistently made the semi-finals. With the legendary Eddie Jones now back home and at the helm of Wallaby Rugby, perhaps Australia have found a hero in the one-time World Cup winner. Not to mention the old foe England being weakened in recent years. But what does recent history tell us about these 3 teams? We should mention that as of this video, the top 2 spots in the World Rugby rankings are held by the Irish and Springboks respectively, but all 3 Southern Giants struggled to find form during the 2022 season, with losses to France, England, Ireland and Wales heavily affecting the rankings. Since the end of the last World Cup, a new cycle has started, due to COVID-19 ravaging the world. Many southern nations halted international rugby for at least a year. Unfortunately, this proved to be detrimental when the North and South met for the first time in 2021 and 2022. Aside from the Springboks winning the British and Irish Lions, no real gains were made. and the North continue to dominate the southern nations. Thanks to this domination and a lack of rugby down south, many players opted for larger contracts at clubs in Europe, whilst this weakened many of the top teams. Teams like France, England and Ireland saw an increase in the quality of local rugby, cultivating players like Antoine Dupont and Josh van der Fleer, among many others. Now that the 2023 World Cup cycle has rolled around, it's an undeniable fact that the Northern Hemisphere is simply on a different level, and the South is playing catch-up as much as possible. Add to this the fact that the tournament will be held in France, and we're left with a clear advantage for Europe. Additionally, the underperforming Wallabies are coming off a winless 2023 season, which could put more pressure on the All Blacks and Springboks to be the team that carries the Southern Hemisphere. But can the Southern trifecta turn all of this around? Why the Webb Ellis Trophy is heading back south? Let's face it, the Northern Hemisphere is known for one thing, and that one thing is choking in big games. Perhaps the lead up to the 2019 World Cup is the best example. During the 4 years, the British and Irish Lions managed to draw against the All Blacks. The Irish registered an unprecedented victory over New Zealand, and, well, the Wallabies and Springboks both lost home series matches against northern opposition. The build-up seemed to be perfect, but only the English capitalised on this, advancing to the final before being destroyed by South Africa. Europe has consistently struggled in World Cup years, losing pointless matches or mismanaging games to see the Southern Hemisphere teams smash past them. We believe this trend will continue, and once again, the North will be all hype before losing out to the more consistent teams Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. But what do you think? Do you think Europe can finally realise its potential? And do you think either France, England or Ireland can finally dismantle Southern opposition to bring the Webb Ellis Trophy back to the Northern Hemisphere where rugby started? Be sure to let us know in the comments, and don't forget to smash that like button if you enjoy rugby content.